Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and I just saw A Star is Born at the Baghdad Theater with a couple of my wonderful colleagues.
The movie, Bennett did not just watch a live birth on stage.
Why would that even, occur to you?
Because that's actually never mind. It's going into Judy Garland. We'll wait for a minute.
You're going to have to clue me on this later. But the voice you're hearing right now is Maxwell Meyers. Max, have you seen a live birth on stage lately?
I hope not.
That thought is in your head for some reason.
Well, it's funny. Well, just the sentence, I saw A Star is Born. I just saw A Star is Born makes it sound like you just saw somebody being born. But funnily enough, I just was watching...
Grammatically confused. I saw A Star is Born.
Yeah, well, because...
You would have said A Star being born.
I mean, I guess you could say that, but I was just recently watching A Star is Born starring Judy Garland. This is getting weird. And they actually has a song about being born on stage. And so that's why I was like, it would have been a great throwback if it was. But
I'm glad they didn't play well. Please.
We've been talking for a minute.
And we're already derailed.
Well, I think it's time to move on to Mo Shaunette. And before I let Mo greet you all, I just want to say there are many kinds of stars. Some are like Lady Gaga, but some are the people who just help everyone else get shit done, and Mo coordinated with all of us and make sure we were actually in the right place with tickets tonight. So
in a great seat.
Applause.
Thank you. I wouldn't say coordinate. I'd say I have nothing better to do with my time than show up 3 hours before a movie and sit in a bar and read, because I'm trying to get out of the house more, so it was either binge the second season of Big Mouth or keep reading.
Wait, you're telling me Big Mouth is on TV and I'm here? Yeah. I'm kidding.
You know what? The gods of cinema thank you. That's the bottom line.
Sure.
And also here we have Jim Newman. Jim, how are you?
I'm good, and I think one reason that Mo came early is the Baghdad is a beautiful old theater. I don't know its history, but oh my God, sitting in that room with those chandeliers,
have you been here
the
before?
balcony, I know I have been here before, but for whatever reason, maybe I was on the first floor and I didn't notice the chandeliers. I didn't notice that. I don't know if it's Art Deco or I don't know what the era is for the architecture here, but it's a beautiful building.
It's an amazing place. And before we delve into our review, I want to say something. I want to plug this place. No, they didn't sponsor us. We don't get sponsors. Maybe they'll hear this and be like, "Oh yeah, these guys."
Yeah.
But it always feels like a party here. Always,
it doesn't matter. Afternoon.
Yeah,
we're at the backstage bar next door to the Baghdad Theater.
That's right. And this is a great place to see big event movies like this.
That's what all the ambient noise is. We got music playing through the speakers. We got dudes playing a pool over there. We got other people talking. It's questionable how this will sound, but
come here and you'll see why it's so great. Why we managed to keep dealing with it.
Just a technical thing. The audio, the sound system in this old theater is magnificent.
Oh yeah,
it's beautiful here.
And speaking of sound, I think it's time to get into our thoughts on this very musically minded movie, guys. What did you think of A Star is Born?
Lady Gaga is great. She was watchable even in parts of the movie that I thought of as kind of turgid and really a downer as we watch Bradley Cooper slowly disintegrate, which is the trope of all of the Star is Born movies and
indeed musical biopics in general.
Yeah, right. And the male character who is on his way down while the female star is rising, it's always painful to watch. This one was sufficiently realistic, I thought, that it was extra difficult to watch. And that was bothersome, but in many other ways, I think this was an extremely exciting movie because of choices that Bradley Cooper made. Like the drag bar,
That was great.
sequence was amazing. I love the
Arguably,
characters.
Possibly the best part of the film.
That might be the best scene.
Well, let me ask you this, Jim. This is what you bring up puts in my mind an interesting distinction that I always think is kind of fun to chew over. You talked about the kind of these painful, turgid, as you described, the parts of the movie. No, I think it's always interesting. Certainly, I think all of us like movies that have really disturbing sections, but sometimes we feel like, I can weather it because I feel like it has a purpose and the movie is so great, and sometimes it's like, I don't want to put up with this. I don't see the point. Did you? Which side would you fall on? Did you feel it goes too far?
Yeah, it seemed a little like kabuki theater or something, where there's just this tradition when you watch A Star Is Born. There's one person on the rise, the other person is falling. You know it's going to happen. I mean, Bradley Cooper made really interesting choices about how he declined. I thought the dialogue was really good, but nevertheless, it's tiring in a sense to watch that decline for me.
Gotcha.
You know it's coming. You know you're going to have to endure it. Yeah, they sprinkle a lot of exciting elements, such as the songs, and she did a beautiful job.
She did.
All the way through. So it kind of was sufficient, almost a sufficient reward to keep watching it.
I'm just so excited about the kabuki comparison because I never would have thought of that, but I'm really digging it. Mo, what about you? What'd you think?
I was extremely disappointed in this. This movie is called A Star Is Born, yet Jason Bourne did not appear once in the entire runtime. What the hell?
Not even Matt Damon.
I would watch that movie in a heartbeat.
No, I thought this was fine. I don't go in for these sorts of movies. It's for whatever reason, my tastes never fall into that. I think this was well done. I think Bradley Cooper shows some promise as a director. I think there's still some edges that needed to be smoothed over. But it was good. Again, Lady Gaga, she did an amazing job. I did not know she could act that well. I watched like part of the season of American Horror Story she was in.
For which she won an Emmy.
She did win an Emmy. I did not think she deserved it for that one, personally. But that's partially because that was the same year that Kirsten Dunst was nominated for Fargo, and she was amazing in that.
And let's face it, Lady Gaga in American Horror Story is just Lady Gaga being Lady Gaga.
Yeah, basically. But this, she's like playing an actual character.
Yeah.
Which is not to discredit Lady Gaga's persona in any way. Obviously, it's more. It seems like it was more
Reality based.
Yeah, and I thought she did a really great job. If anyone was the weak link, honestly, for me in the cast was Bradley Cooper, just because he spent the whole time doing a Sam Elliott impression.
Oh my God! Thank God.
And then it's like, oh yeah, also Sam Elliott plays his brother, and it's like. There's a line where it's like, you stole my voice, and it's like, is that meta text or am I just reading into it?
No, let me say that there was a New York Times article, a very long article, in which Bradley Cooper acknowledged that he was imitating Sam Elliott. In fact, he felt that he had to lower his voice for this role. And I'm amazed that it's actually on screen where Sam Elliott says, you stole my voice, because he was imitating it.
Well, we have to move on to Max in just a second, but I want to speak to what you guys are saying really quickly. Certainly the fact that he is imitating Sam Elliott is, in a very literal sense, built into the story. I think, the idea that he has, ripped off his brother's sound, and that's part of his character arc as he kind of starts to redeem himself. He starts to talk more like Bradley Cooper. I think, though, that there is an important problem here from my perspective, which is that I don't necessarily think that I needed to see an entire movie of Bradley Cooper talking like that. Like, I think he's so good that I think he would be more liberated and more free if he just
had
talk
done
about.
that voice.
I think so, yeah. And
See,
it was a choice, but
I
yeah.
actually took it. I mean, when I heard it, I was like, "Oh, he sounds like Sam Elliott." And then he's like, "Oh, Sam Elliott's my brother. Sam Elliott basically raised me." I was like, "Oh, okay, then that makes sense." Like, I honestly was. I did, but what I did was like, I mean, I just laughed because I was like, I mean, clearly he's imitating Sam Elliott. But the reason he's imitating Sam Elliott is because that's who raised him, and I'm assuming that he talks that way because his father talked that way, who was also Bradley Cooper's father. They play half brothers technically in the movie. But so the way I see it, I was like, I mean, he's from Arizona. I was like, that's clearly not an Arizona accent. I don't know what an Arizona accent is, but I know it's not Sam Elliott because I've met plenty of people from Arizona who don't sound like Sam Elliott. But I did laugh at the "you stole my voice" line because I was like, do you think they chuckled a few times when they said that? Like, because I did think of that, but I was able to look a little bit past that. But yeah, I mean, I really liked the movie. I thought it was decent. I mean, it didn't blow me away. I think it could have used a little more exposition, weirdly enough. Like, I felt that the relationship between the two moved very quickly. But yeah,
I agree with that 100%.
But also, I think it's. I was just saying that I haven't finished the Star Is Born with Judy Garland, and that one's almost 3 hours long. Granted, there are like full-on musical numbers, so clearly, like a good half an hour of that could be taken out from just people not singing. But even then, it's still moving very slowly, and in relationship-wise, and I feel like. But that's just a sign of the times. I think back then you would go to a movie for an experience, an event, so you wouldn't mind being there for 3 hours because it was like going to a play in a way. Like it was live, it was theater. So today, like no one can sit for 3 hours long, regardless of who's on screen.
I would disagree with that to a certain extent because there have been a number of fairly major 3-hour movies in the past few years. Whether we're talking about something like The Dark Knight Rises or Interstellar, which is very close to 3 hours, or Blue Is the Warmest Color, or The Wolf of Wall Street, which are each 1 minute under 3 hours. And I do agree that I think there is less patience among today's viewers. You're right, and I don't want to talk about that in a second. I just dropped my bike helmet, by the way, if you're wondering what that was. But but this is actually 2.5 hours long with the trailers, which is kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah. So. Maybe there's an issue there. I mean, I'm not saying that people can't sit there. I think if a story's entrancing enough, it will pull you in that way. But I also think it's hard to compare that because we're all movie watchers, and I think, but by and large, I mean, with the declining ticket sales, clearly people don't like sitting for a long time. People would rather sit at home and binge watch something. So,
not to get hung up on this, but Titanic was really not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. That was over 3 hours.
Was that over 3 hours?
Yeah, the Lord of the Rings films.
And I also thought that was long.
Yeah,
I remember sitting during Return of the King going, is this almost over? How much more story can we be? We've been here for so long. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed every minute of it, but I was also in my seat going, how much longer is this? Not knowing that there was a director's cut that was 5 hours long, going, okay.
I think you're right. I think there is less patience, but I think that when the right movie comes along, people do rise to the occasion.
And then
there's no doubt that the needle has been shifted. I mean, movies are faster paced now, even really.
Well, then if you would go by that theory, then this would not be a fantastic, epic movie on the level of Return of the King. And no real surprise there. I mean, we got Bradley Cooper directing and Lady Gaga starring. Not that they're not lovely people, but this was clearly not the epic adventure of the Return of the King.
You having watched much of the Judy Garland movie,
I mean,
what did you think about her?
2/3 in.
Well, one thing I read, I did not watch it, but I did see some of the performances on YouTube of her singing various songs. A commentary I read said that scene to scene, you could see the fluctuations in her health. She was very sick during much of the production of that movie, and her weight changed from some scenes to some scenes.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. While I was watching, at a certain point I was like, her face looks more full in this scene than another one, but there's also a lot of elements to it that they also kind of deal with this in here, which is like, they change her makeup and her hair, they're trying to make her, a star. So, like, it was hard. I was like, maybe this is just an old movie, maybe it's just the makeup, but now that you say that, that would make sense. When I was watching her, I was honestly blown away by Garland's performance. And while I was watching, I was like, I see why they cast Streisand in the 70s. And then while watching this, I was like, I see why they cast Lady Gaga. Like, there's you can see this. There's always been a theatricality to this lead actress. I mean, Garland is pure theatrics, and then Streisand, the whole gamut. But yeah, and so now it's interesting to see this version. And she does have a theatricality to her.
Lady Gaga was just playing great.
She was magnificent.
She is terrific, and I think she was one of the few things that I unequivocally liked about the film. I do like a couple other things about it. I think visually it's outstanding. Cinematography was by Matthew Libatique, who's Darren Aronofsky's longtime cinematographer. So many beautiful shades of red and kind of like rich three-dimensional lighting that is just really poetic and kind of surreal and just fills your eyes with wonderment. The songs are great. There's a sincerity to the movie that's very appealing. But I have to agree with your point, Max, in that I feel like there is too much happening. This is a contemporary musical, so I'll compare it to another contemporary musical, La La Land.
Okay.
La La Land, the opening number, you don't see the main characters. You build the relationship up over a number of scenes, or I didn't build it, Damien Chazelle. And they don't even kiss until halfway through the movie. In this, he walks into the bar. She's the first person he sees sing. There's not even like a couple other acts to kind of, stoke the suspense of like, oh, when is she going to come out? They practically fall in love over a single night. I don't know what point she gets a Grammy nomination, but it's pretty quick. And I've been kind of whining a lot lately to anyone who will listen, that I really do believe that the best movies, with certain exceptions, are told over a pretty compact period of time, because the more compact the period of time, the more detail you can get out of that period of time. The more detail it is, the more absorbed you are. And this movie sort of felt like a rubber band that was like stretched so thin that like kind of some of the detail fades away, and there are a lot of moments, and this is true of a lot of musical biopics. This isn't a biopic, but it sure feels like one.
It's a musical, yeah. Journey.
It is, and where you get to it, and it's like, wow, how did we get here? Like, I don't understand the emotional, journey. Like, I don't understand how she goes from being this really modest person who's afraid to sing to having a bunch of backup dancers. We see her even object to the backup dancers, and we don't even understand how she changes her mind. It's kind of like listening to a CD or a playlist, but it's like it's on speed. The dial or what have you. I'm showing my age here. Has been cranked up, so it's not like songs. It's like. And I hate to say that, because there were moments where the movie really affected me and moved me, and I thought it was really potent. But I just think it's too fast. I think it should have. It was just funny for a movie that's so long.
Yeah.
But I think if the screen time, perhaps it's not that it's too long. Perhaps it's just that the screen time is not used as well as it could have been.
I think that is when we were talking. I was like, well, if it's not the length of time we spend, and the songs weren't even we don't even really hear a lot of full songs.
I think that's a good point.
A lot of them are in snips and pieces, which I think works. I really do think that works. But you're right. If we're at 2.5 hours, we're not even getting that many full songs. Yet for some reason, it doesn't feel quite. It might be just the space and the time is utilized as well.
Yes. Yeah.
I thought one structural thing that they did well, and it did tend to telescope time. You're right; they just moved through it pretty fast. But I think they did hit their marks in terms of one issue that Bradley Cooper had was that he did not want to make the Jackson Maine character jealous through the whole movie, and he
That's a really interesting point.
he didn't want to make his destruction based on his jealousy of the Lady Gaga character. So, okay, that makes sense. But the way they showed it was when this potential agent or manager comes to Allie's, I don't know, after a performance, he comes up to her and starts offering her the future that she's always dreamed of. Then in the next scene, Bradley Cooper, Jackson Maine, is drunk, and he rubs some sort of cheese or pastry all over her face.
Like cake with like cream cheese.
I like that actually. I like that scene.
But she asks,
I did too.
why are you so jealous? But they end up nuzzling each other in this cheese. And then
You think it's like an abusive thing, and then it turns out to be oddly kind of a tender
exactly,
thing.
and I think that was kind of clever screenwriting, that they got the jealousy. They addressed it and then wiped it off the stage. And the next scene, they're in the studio, and he saves her career by coming in and letting or understanding that she needs to play the piano to feel free enough to sing as well as she can sing. So that was cool.
It's true. He did do a good job at making that a point.
I will say, I get what you're saying about like sort of kind of misusing the runtime. They're leaning really heavily on montage as a means of moving the story forward, as a means of kind of filling in the gaps. But I think the reason they did that, I'm not necessarily defending it, but I'm saying I understand it, is that it's a movie that's a lot more about emotion. It's about getting these big ideas across in terms of, or at least these big feelings across in its language, and that sort of takes priority over the more heady questions of like how much time exactly has passed, how important is it that the audience knows how much time is. They're just getting to the idea of it, but not necessarily going into specifics. And I get that. I was okay with that. I don't usually go in for these movies, so this was not. So I'm not necessarily inclined to love it, but I can respect a lot of it. I'm sorry, that was a weird tangent. I kind of lost focus out halfway through.
No. That's a good tangent. You brought up something I think is really important. I mean, the use of montages in this movie. I mean, montages are a very interesting thing in and of themselves, and I can often be very critical of movies that overuse them, because I feel like too often they're a shortcut to emotion or a shortcut to ideas, and so you don't really feel the ideas or the emotion because it's like you're just juxtaposing a lot of stuff. But then again, I love Terrence Malick, and all his films are basically long montages. So I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, it's really all about how you play it, and execution. It is about execution, and to defend the movie to a certain degree. I feel like my issue is not necessarily understanding the emotional journey. Wasn't necessarily to do with the montages. I think it was more the way the other scenes were arranged. So the montages, I think you make a good point. I think they are effective to a degree. Another thing I want to ask you guys about is Manohla Dargis, in her review in the New York Times, said that this film focuses very heavily on the male character, more so than other versions have done. I haven't seen any other versions of this, but there is a really intense focus on Jackson Maine.
Yeah.
And in a way, I feel the movie is more engaged with his journey than hers. And I just wondered if you guys could speak to, is there a problem when a movie called A Star is Born that is, ostensibly about a woman rising to power gets so intensely hung up on this guy's self-destructive journey at the expense of the female lead's journey?
I mean, I know that at a certain point I was actually thinking, I was like, I think it's... Lately we've been dealing with a lot of the Brett Kavanaugh stuff, which I really don't like to bring up. But it's been on my mind as of late. And
by the way, since you brought it up, fuck Brett Kavanaugh and everyone who voted for him.
Agreed. Second. Anyways, but I did actually have that kind of thought that, like, I was like, at a certain point I was like, this seems a little weird to be like, oh, look at this guy, and look at the self-destructive path that he's on, and he ultimately does it, like, it almost, in a way, felt like it was because of her, and I was like, but the reason he fails, like, it's really hard, you gotta have to, like, focus that he obviously has a lot of problems, which is a lot of the male leads do, but I also think it could be actually a sign of the times, I think in the 50s, it was interesting and exciting to see a woman rise to power and get into this position because it didn't happen that often. All men had all the power. I was like, oh, a woman rising? How subversive. And even for the 70s, it was more like, I don't know, you kind of run on the coattails of women's liberation, which it's like, you want to see a woman rise to power. Like, yeah! So in a way, I think we have seen women rise to power, and we're all for it, and I think we do get to see that. But it's interesting to also focus a little, maybe it is nice to shift the focus a little bit on the person who is star is falling and the reason it's falling and his journey there. And that, I mean, this movie's been now remade, this is the 4th time. It's maybe it might not have been the right decision, but it's a clever decision to make, to at the very least set it apart, maybe adding a little bit of focus, and it doesn't really feel about him, more about the... I almost wish they had dealt with a little bit more of, like, this is kind of in a way his own fault. Like, they don't bring up the fact that the reason he's not getting hired is not because his wife or girlfriend is popular, but because he has a drinking problem and a pill addiction.
Yeah.
And that's why he's not getting work, and that's why he gets bumped the way he does. So I almost wish, again, I wish they had dealt with a little more backstory into that. But I don't think it was the best decision, but at the very least, I'll commend him on a clever decision of focusing on the interesting demise of a person.
Jim? Mo?
I thought that Bradley Cooper played a drunk really well. And I think I have seen enough alcoholics to really have my skin crawl when some of that behavior came out, like when he makes it very clear that he thinks that Allie is ugly. And he says that solely because he knows that it will hurt her, and he clearly in that moment wants to feel something, and he wants to feel power because he knows he's losing it. So, okay, I get that he did that well, but I don't really, and this might simply be me, other people might be interested in it, but I don't care to watch alcoholics abuse people at all. And so it was bothersome
It's not
in that
America's
way.
pastime.
Yeah, it
Again,
was cool.
We're coming off the end of the Kavanaugh hearing, so that's kind of
It's sore.
it's fresh in our minds.
Yes, absolutely.
You're right.
I with regards to shifting the focus towards the male lead, I'm not surprised because he directed it. So I think he would want to give himself, let himself do the heavy lifting.
So it's probably easier to know if you know your character and you're directing the movie. It's probably easier to focus on you. I think that's why a lot of actor-turned-directors end up being the lead in their movies.
Oh, yeah.
He had good
show, but it
technique.
carries.
I mean, his technique was excellent, I thought, in this movie. He did a good job.
Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really. This is gonna sound real shitty, but I don't have a lot of thoughts on this movie on that, or at least on that subject in particular. I'm not surprised. I did partway through. Did think it might be interesting if everything was the same, except they were instead of Bradley Cooper playing the main character, we would have a woman. I mean, that would be.
I think that'd be fascinating.
Different. You could go through the same kind of thing.
You mean 2 women?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking
that'd be
partway
great,
through, I was
yeah.
like, 2 women or even 2 men. Like, I think, at this point, I
That
think,
would be great,
I
too.
mean, I
Yeah,
think
it
at this
would be a
point,
totally different dynamic.
if they're going to remake this movie again 20 years from now,
Which they will.
which, I mean, and honestly, at this point, I would be okay with that. I think at this point, it almost feels like a movie tradition at this point. Like,
Oh, yeah.
every couple of decades, remake A Star Is Born.
It's like Cinderella. It's not like a movie anymore. It's a myth.
Exactly, and I mean, and it's a story that gets told a lot about, small town person wants to become a star and how it happens almost overnight, and they have that certain something. But I think if they do it again, yeah, I think we need to go wild, and which hopefully in 20 years from now, maybe A Star Is Born starring 2 women, we'll be like. I mean, sure, I guess. Like old hat at that point. I think it would be. But I think if they do, it has to be different for the next time out.
I think one thing that happened in this movie is that the second-tier characters, some of the most appealing humans in this movie were gay characters. I mean, there were the drag queens, there was Lady Gaga's best friend, who I perceived as gay. I mean, they didn't
Well,
say
he was
that.
like the host of the drag bar, so odds are good.
Yeah. I mean, and
He was played by a veteran of musical theater, so perhaps.
Again, lots of averages.
I don't want to stereotype or assume. I don't know Anthony Ramos's life, but yeah, I would guess.
Andrew Dice Clay.
Andrew Dice Clay was
and
decent.
wasn't he amazing as a father, right?
It was they worked so well together. Lady Gaga and Andrew Dice Clay.
Did anybody here know him as a comedian when he was the bad boy of comedy? He was transgressive as hell.
At that point, I was just a baby. So
Yeah, you were.
I was that bad baby of life.
I didn't know anything about him.
I know he's kind of a dick. That's about it.
Yeah, he was sexist, transgressive. I mean, he did everything no one should do. I mean,
Yeah.
ultra masculine, putting women down, that kind of thing.
And yet here he is,
Yeah.
playing a
But
fatherly figure.
I thought he did a great job. Saying, I was better than Sinatra.
Well, and I think, he plays a great dad, but really, it's the 2 of them. You can only tell how good of a dad you are compared to your child. And the part when it's literally, he's just telling the story about how some person told him he's just as good as Sinatra, and Lady Gaga is literally at the same time, simultaneously saying the same thing that he's saying, same inflection, just like, yeah, they're good as Sinatra. Their
was a good
chemistry,
running gag.
that chemistry with them was spectacular. I really like that. And
That was one of the high points to me of the whole movie, that those secondary characters were really that strong.
Sam Elliott damn near walked away with the movie. For me,
He did a
Yeah, I
fine
was
job.
okay. I hope everyone's as impressed with Sam Elliott as I am.
I came out. While I'm watching, I'm doing the tag. We're sort of at the top of Oscar season, and this is definitely going to try and run for it. Oscar loves musicals, so it's definitely trying to go in for that.
Well, and historically speaking, Oscar loves A Star Is Born.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely Sam Elliott for supporting, and I would even say, depending on how this shakes out, last year was a really strong year for women, but Lady Gaga at the very least should be talked about. I think
Oh yeah, I
she
think
does.
Yeah.
She gets the nod for sure. In my opinion.
I mean, yeah, they should be in talks. I mean, if we have another year with Frances McDormand and
Yeah.
Lady Bird and Shape of Water, where you
Like,
have all these
I'm still looking ahead. I'm still banking on Mary Queen of Scots to be the big women-centric movie. But I could definitely see Lady Gaga getting a Best Actress nod. I could see Sam Elliott for supporting. Definitely original song.
oh, of course,
Probably for In the Shallows. Score, maybe cinematography. I don't know if I see actor and director in the future.
I want to get into that because I definitely want to dive into its Oscar chances with you because I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack. But I do want to say before we get on to that, first of all, I agree. Andrew Dice Clay, I think, is a really strong dramatic actor, and indeed he was one of the most memorable parts of Blue Jasmine a couple years back, and that was a more dramatic role as well. On terms of the question about does it focus too heavily on the Cooper character, I think you guys said it all pretty well, so really well. So I just want to add one more thing.
Go for it.
So Bradley Cooper basically kills himself because Lady Gaga's manager has a really mean talk with him. She hooks up with them, or she employs the manager because that's kind of like a symbol of her reaching for more superficial success. So in a way, the movie almost makes it look like his death is her fault in terms of the events that transpire, even though Sam Elliott says it's not your fault. Like it all, and she's all humble at the end, singing, and her hair is back to its natural color. It's almost like the movie is like saying if you're selfish and you go for superficial success, Bradley Cooper will die. And here's the other problem with that. The movie was all about authenticity, and authenticity good, fakery bad. But here's the thing. What makes Lady Gaga so compelling as a musical performer is that she is a master of brilliant, gorgeous, meaningful fakery. I think not all fakery or showmanship is inherently bad. Yeah, you look at the Paparazzi music video, which is just dizzyingly awesome, and just the weird array of dance moves and costumes. I mean, she's practically not even Lady Gaga in that. She's almost like she's another character.
Well, she is Lady Gaga. I mean, her real name is Stephanie Germanotta.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, like, part of being Lady Gaga is about she's always transforming into something else. So I feel like that kind of undercuts the movie's kind of devotedness to this creed of authenticity, when in fact, yes, authenticity can be valuable in performance, but sometimes fakery and a lack of authenticity can be beautiful and meaningful, because sometimes you have to do something outlandish to communicate a feeling that's real. Paparazzi is about the feeling of being under the microscope, which is something real that I imagine she feels. And so I think there's a conflict of the messages they're trying to deal with.
I'm actually going to argue against this. I would go that it is her lack of authenticity that almost ultimately undoes him. I think they tried to make this the focus that he's not jealous. I think it's really easy. It would have been really easy to be like, I'm really jealous of your success. I helped you get here, and now my star is falling, and I'm just depressed, so I'm going to drink myself into oblivion and kill myself. But if you avoid that easy path, it's like, well, how do we get here? It's like, and really ultimately what causes Bradley Cooper's decision to do what he does is that the manager says, you embarrassed her, you almost derailed her career, but she's not going to be honest with you and tell you that happened. That's what he tells her, and he goes, and trust me, you're going to go away because that's what has to happen, because that's how this industry works, and you can't be a liability for that long. And then what does he do? He goes to lay down and wallow, and she goes, oh, by the way, we canceled the tour. And he's like, why? And she lies to him, and she admits that she lies to him. And the thing is, she lies to him, but he knows the truth, and then he makes his choice to just kind of end it. I don't agree with it. So in a way, I would say that it was the lack of authenticity that, like, she was like, she should have been honest with him. And also, I think, yeah, I don't know if I got there.
No, you are saying something that seems really true to me, but my sense is I watched the 1937 A Star is Born with Jeanette Gaynor and Frederick March, and it is not a musical, and turgid is the word of that movie.
I think turgid is the word of this podcast.
Word of the day.
But the thing about it is, the premise of all of those movies is that celebrity is a worthy human pursuit, and anyone that stands in the way, like the male character in this case, stands in the way of your pursuit of celebrity, really ought to step aside. And if that means killing himself, then so be it, because he's then a hero. I mean, it sticks in my craw that that's the value system of A Star is Born, really.
Yeah, that was my issue with it. Like, I get that it's him sacrificing himself as means of ensuring her success, that she gets to live her dream, and
They could have had a happy life together.
More than that, they could have had a way that it didn't end with him hating himself.
Right,
Jeez,
and they had a great dog, too.
I was worried they were going to kill the dog.
I was like, oh no, what's in that steak?
Oh, God, put up with a lot of shit.
But I think that just, for me, I've read stories I've liked where sort of a character committing suicide as a means of sacrifice is seen as somehow an inherently noble act, and I've read stories like that work. There's very few of those.
Yeah.
I think for me, at least in this situation, it seemed like they explained it well enough. They explained that he did attempt suicide when he was younger, and sort of the subtext is that he's been dealing with depression for a long time and is just incapable of getting treatment or whatever. But that ending rubbed me the wrong way. The other reason is that I wasn't terribly invested in Jackson Maine as a character, but I think that's my issue.
I think, the end, all three of you, I think, bring up really good points about these sequences of events at the end leading to his death, what it means, what the character's motives are, and what the movie is trying to say with that sequence of events. And I agree that there is perhaps something rather disturbing nestled in there. And I'll add one more thing to that. I mean, I do believe that to a certain degree you have to meet a movie on its own terms. And you have to appreciate it for what it is, not necessarily what you want it to be, because the best movies give you something you didn't even expect or know to ask for. That being said, I did come into this movie, wanting a big, kind of explosive musical, romantic epic, and at certain points I got it, but to be honest, I didn't really want to have it end with him killing himself. I mean, it's depressing, and this is not really the kind of movie, the kind of mainstream musical where I want that sort of, downbeat, realistic ending.
It's not fulfilling. It's just not fulfilling that.
No.
But it felt real. That's the one thing. I absolutely
But do we
love
want reality from a movie like this? I think that's the question.
I think, again, what are we going to... I mean, we've had these iterations before, and, again, I only have the Judy Garland one to go off of, but that one... I mean, when that movie starts up and the old Warner Brothers logo comes up, I mean, I do think to myself, there's a lot of problematic things socially with that movie that I was wondering how they would really get around in this one without... Because I'm like, if you're going to remake something, you could easily just take a script and, put it in modern times, and I was like... There's a lot of things that happen that just don't work. But I was like, and so there's problematic things of that era, but it's so grand and it's so big. It's what you're talking about, but it's not real. I mean, I'm sorry. Nobody sets up my living room for a dance number that they were practicing on the Warner Brothers lot and is able to pull it off with applause.
I'm sorry. That's the other thing is that we talk a lot about this desire for authenticity in the movie. but that's really difficult to pull off with musicals because people do not burst into song and dance randomly at the drop of a hat just because they have really strong emotions. So we get these scenes where like just the first bit where he's like, I'm gonna bring out my friend and she's gonna sing a song, and they have not rehearsed it. There's no preparation. He is springing this on her.
He apparently arranged it yesterday.
He remembered the lyrics when he was like completely pissed.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh no, they sing the perfect song on their first try in front of a live audience.
So that's talent, though.
It's a stretch of a talent.
And also, like, how long has she been writing songs that she can write something that like really complex and sharp?
That's a beautiful song.
I mean, I watched a girl from Australia sing a Johnny Cash song that I know she has heard 1.5 million times, that she's probably sang perfectly by herself several times, and she still fucked up the words, and she said, fuck, how can I fuck up Johnny Cash in America? Oh, this is the West.
So you guys are bringing up some really interesting things here. And I have a question for you about the idea that we're all circling, because I think we're like, we're going around the eye of the hurricane, and so here's what I think is at the center.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of musicals. I grew up watching musicals. Here's the one thing that the great ones have in common: they are unabashedly fake.
Yeah.
Singing in the Rain, completely fake. West Side Story,
not
so
real.
fake that like the lighting looks like something out of Vertigo. You know, it looks like, in a good way, a comic book version of New York City. That's why it's so exhilarating. The emotions are real, but the setting is very stylized, and that's a thrilling thing to behold. So, do you guys think part of some of the issues with this movie is that it's maybe kind of oddly positioned between fakery and authenticity, and it has a hard time fully committing to either one?
I can see that. Yeah, I can see what you mean, because we do have like these. A lot of it does feel like it's sticking to this very realistic aesthetic. So we have like the opening number of him, like his first song. It's all shaky cam. We don't see. It looks kind of clumsy, to be honest. We don't see his face for a lot of it. There's the lights. There's the lens flare in the background.
Yep.
And it does seem like, I guess, stylized reality, if that makes any sense.
That does, yeah.
But then you get to the story, and it is this like sweeping romantic melodrama. This big, like you said, kabuki. It's big and it's expressive, and that sort of feels like it clashes in some way. It helps and it hinders, I would say, because a lot of the motions do we keep talking about like authenticity versus reality. A lot of the emotions feel real. They do that well. I'm not gonna say they don't. It's not a failure in my mind, but it doesn't entirely hold together. It's a little shaky. Like I said, I feel like there's still some rough edges to smooth out.
Yeah, I would say that there is a little bit of a half in, half out, but the emotion is fully real. I think that's why La La Land worked so well in 2 years ago, and why before that no musical really worked before, is that I think Damien Chazelle said, he goes, I wanted to make an old style musical where, in the middle of the street, all of a sudden you could burst out into song. And how does he anchor that fantasticness with the reality is he deals with a very real relation. He deals with a real relationship in, like, he doesn't, like, he keeps the reality in all the non-singing parts and lets it go balls to the wall, fantastic, with full-on numbers from start to finish, dancing, everyone's in traffic on cars, like, and I think that it actually feels like, and I think that is that, but he found that perfect balance, which is allow all the fantastic to live within the most fantastic, unreal part, but everything else has to be real, and for some reason it works, and I think in this one it does to an extent, but it does feel a little half in, half out. And
and that is really ironic, because if there were a takeaway, a philosophically meaningful takeaway from this movie, it would be, you're going to be a successful singer if you have something to say. I mean, he brings that up a couple of times.
Yes.
Promise me, when you perform, remember, you'll always have to have something to say. When he puts down Sam Elliott, Sam Elliott says, you stole my voice. You know, if you say that I'm not that good, why would you steal my voice? You weren't using it because you had nothing to say. Well, I mean, that thought isn't sewn fully, integrally into the movie. It just isn't. I mean, it should be, maybe, if you want authenticity, because that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know, if you're an artist, you really ought to have something to say.
Yeah.
But this movie ended up being an echo of 3 other movies.
Part of it for me, like the moment of like she's being inauthentic is like she has backup dancers, she changes her hair color, and then like the big thing is that she goes on Saturday Night Live and does like some club rock party anthem.
Yeah.
And
It's just like 2 words repeated. Yeah.
which me personally, just someone who watches, who like tries his best to keep up with popular culture, it's like, man, sometimes you gotta pay the bills. Sometimes you gotta you know.
Sometimes you got to sell the album with the pop anthems so you can then put your deep cuts in later.
Yeah, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts right now is Don't Add Me with Justin Simeon. He's the guy who created Dear White People. He has a bunch of friends in showbiz and he just interviews them. And he talked to the head of Netflix, or the chief content officer of Netflix, Ted Sarandos. And they talked about, he asked him, you know, what's more important, that you get views or that you get critical appraisal? And he says, well, first off, we try to please everyone. We're still acknowledging that critics are people, definitely, and they're part of our audience, that we're trying to please them.
I can attest that all 4 of us are people right here.
People.
At least like 70% people.
Mostly
Somewhere in
water.
there. Yeah, that's close.
Yeah.
He said, Ted Sarandos says, you know, we had a movie that came on a few weeks ago called Insatiable, got ravaged by the critics, but did really great numbers. And here's the thing: we want to have a long tail. We want to be able to create all these prestigious, really good, really interesting works. But you also got to have a big head. You also got to have numbers. You got to have people coming back, something that you can drag the long tail with. So he ultimately said, you know, I would prefer to do both, but so that we can make the good, interesting, transgressive, nuanced, different stuff, we gotta sometimes do something that's not necessarily popular with critics, but is big with audiences. And I get that. Like, it's called show business. There's a business part.
You watch the movie to the end on Netflix. I shut them off a lot.
I do. It's so I get what I think that's also part of like maybe that's like the impetus for Suicide, is like the world's left him behind, where it's not just the business has changed, audiences have changed. He can't just be like the authentic gravelly voice rock star anymore. He's got to have something else to sell. You got to hit the 4 quadrants. And he can't do that.
What did you think about his performance?
I thought it was fine. Again, like, I got really distracted because it's like, oh, you're just doing a Sam Elliott impression.
It was.
I thought he was fine. He's believable as a drunk. I don't know if it was a fortune, but at a friend's birthday party recently, I got to witness up close someone who was blackout drunk. It's very similar. It feels like he wasn't necessarily a flat character. He has more of an emotional arc, but he's more muted. Like, he's there for Lady Gaga to bounce off of, and like most of the time. And I think he works in that capacity. I wasn't blown away. I think Bradley Cooper's a good actor. I think he's got chops, and I like seeing him on screen. But yeah, he was fine. He did knock me over. He was not the star in A Star Is Born. That was, for me at least, that was Lady Gaga.
I want to talk about this movie's Oscar chances in a sec, but you brought up
that a moment ago.
I know, famous last words. But you brought up some really interesting things, Mo. So I want to grapple with them a little bit.
Go for it.
Insatiable, was that the show about the girl who like can't speak and loses a bunch of weight?
She's a girl in high school who's really overweight and gets made fun of, and then she gets her jaw wired shut and has to go on a liquid diet. And when she comes back, she's thin and hot, and she suddenly decides she wants to get revenge on everyone whoever was mean to her.
Oh dear.
It got real bad, like, first looks. As soon as the trailer came out, people were like, oh, this is some bullshit.
See, that's because, like, I
haven't watched it, so I can't speak to it.
I haven't watched it either, and I was just thinking about this, like, I feel like if that was a hit, like, it was probably because people were kind of, like morbidly curious, like, is it as awful as it looks, you know, and I'm not even saying that as a pejorative, you know, a hit is a hit, you know, Venom, which opens this weekend, may well be a hit for the same reason,
Well, again, Ted Sarandos, he said that did great numbers, that people watched it all the way through, and that's how Netflix...
Numbers, by the way, that Netflix won't reveal, because they keep it a mystery.
But, like, that's what Netflix says, that's, like, how they measure something, that
if you watch it all the way through.
Yeah, that does better for them.
Yeah.
So, and then another thing I think that I want to talk about, this is a little bit of a tangent, but one thing that A.O. Scott said, incidentally, in his review of La La Land, is that the line between, you know, it said something like the line between selling out and, like, you know, following your dreams is thinner than we might imagine. And I think, and I think, you know, that's maybe something that this The Star Is Born like doesn't quite understand. Like, you know, whenever she does like kind of a showy, crazy performance, it's like it always kind of seems purely superficial. But it is interesting. I think that, you know, like a lot of the greatest artists, they don't think of it in terms of one for me, one for them. Maybe they do one for them, but, you know,
it looks like something else.
Well, yeah, they bring their personal, you know, obsessions to it. Yeah, their personality. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, Batman Begins was a one for them movie, but then again, you look at Batman Begins, well, it's very structurally similar to Memento, so even if it started out as a kind of a corporate assignment, it was turned into a personal thing.
Yeah.
And then I think it's a really fascinating thing to explore, and how this movie, The Star Is Born, engages with that. Speaking of which, I cut you guys off before we weighed in on Best Picture, Best Director. Do you guys think this movie has a shot for the top prizes?
Maybe Best Picture, just because the field is so open now that we can get 10 nominations. I don't know about director. Like, this feels for me at least, this kind of smacks of maybe, if we keep talking about La La Land, maybe it smacks of David Chazelle, where, you know, Whiplash came out, there's a ton of promise, it's really solid, but he's still got to master his craft, he's still got some new things to learn, and we'll see what happens next time. And then next time is La La Land, so maybe they'll wait until Bradley Cooper's next joint, see what he does.
He's got the Leonard Bernstein biopic in the wings.
He does?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd watch that. That sounds like... Is he going to play Bernstein?
Yeah, he is, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
dope.
I fully agree with that statement. I think we've talked about acting nods. I think there's going to be several nods. I mean, again, this is literally... I think we specifically chose this movie because this is kind of day one. This is the first movie that is clearly shooting for that goal. I really don't think... I mean, we really have to see how everything shakes out. There's always things that sound great that end up flopping hard.
And there's always the festival surprise. Nobody knew what Moonlight was until it hit theaters, and then suddenly that was the new hotness.
And this year all of a sudden everyone's talking about Green Book. And no one was talking about
Green Book.
Yeah, like that won the audience award at Toronto, you know, which is the same award that La La Land and the Billboards won.
But yeah, so I mean, he might get a nod, but I mean, we really need to see how it shakes out. But I fully agree with Mo. I think there's definitely promise. He knows he's doing something right, and I think he needs to focus in a little bit, and he'll find it. But I have full faith in him. He will. But no, I definitely don't think he's gonna walk away with the director nomination or a director's award
Unless the rest of the field is
it's just-
completely dead.
Yeah, not. But let's face it. I mean, the Oscars love to nominate people who've won 15 times before. So just for the sake of being there, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my Oscar thoughts. I think we've covered.
Yeah, the rest of it, I'll just reiterate real quick. I can see lead actress for Lady Gaga, supporting actor for Sam Elliott. Because again, they also love supporting just character actors doing like journeyman kind of work.
Doing what they've been doing for years, and it's like, hey, you did this really well this year, and we forgot you're really good at being an actor.
Yeah.
Here's a nod.
I can see that. The music awards, maybe cinematography. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe like technical awards, but I'm not an expert at that.
If I'm going to make a prediction for money right now, come Oscar day, Lady Gaga will get nominated for Best Actress, but she's going to win because she probably wrote the best original song, and they'll probably go, you were great in that movie, but there was this person a little better. Hey, good job writing a song, is my theory about what's going to happen. I'm calling it Oscar night, then we can check back later.
Again, we're really early. The only other thing I don't know what else would be nominated for best song. Like I know we got another Mary Poppins in the pipeline, and
Something from
Not much because there are very few good original songs written for movies.
my favorite song from the year was still "Not a Game" from Blind Spottings, and I don't know how much Oscar.
I'm really hoping maybe
Blind Spotting should be nominated.
I'm hoping something from Kendrick Lamar for Black Panther.
Yeah, that would be dope.
But anyways, this is not an Oscar podcast.
Yet.
Jim, what do you make of Star Is Born's Oscar chances?
I was amazed at the way Bradley Cooper was able to separate individuals and show unique personalities in the beginning of the movie. I thought that this was a movie with intense energy. It was beautifully constructed until it had to start dealing with the plot. Really.
Put that on the poster.
Right, exactly.
Good until the plot comes in. Oh.
But it was beautiful at the setup, the way they meet, the way they go to the bar, the interaction.
It's a great little short film in and of itself.
It is. It's wonderfully done. And had that been, the movie had somehow that energy lasted through the entire 2 hours or whatever the length is, then it would have been a contender. But I agree that it's Sam Elliott and Lady Gaga simply because they stand out. I mean, look, Sam Elliott is magnificent, really, just as a human. With that voice,
He's always
wonderful.
He's been great in everything he does, and that's why I think this could very well be his year, because they love to reward people in specifically supporting categories, which has always seemed so sad. It's like, guess what? You did great this year, but you've been doing great every year, and so keep going. Like, well done. Thank you for being around.
Morgan Freeman, $1 Million Baby, Sam Rockwell, 3 billboards. It's a trend.
I mean, and now I will say, any of these moments, never to belittle them, they definitely deserve them because they were nominated. But I do find that's great.
That's a trend.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that trend. I'm not okay with the, guess what, you get the prize just because you were here long enough, even though you clearly weren't the best at all. Don't even get me started, DiCaprio.
He might have been the best that year.
He wasn't. I fully maintain that. He had been the best a few years before that, and he had been passed over, which is wrong. But that was not. No, sorry. I'm not going to get into this again.
I agree he wasn't the best that year, but I did really like him in The Revenant.
Again, not that he was bad, he just wasn't the best. And that frustrates me when we're going to go, who was the best? This guy. But we're going to go give it to this guy because we didn't give it to him a few years ago. Then why are we even doing this?
So, I think this movie has pretty strong Oscar chances.
Oh yeah.
A movie that's gonna be a Best Picture nominee, it has to have a weird balance. It has to have like this weird, like kind of juxtaposition of artiness and populism. You can't be too indie, but you can't be too mainstream either. And it kind of like burrows into that sweet spot. That sort of like like Argo, the Artist, King's Speech, Birdman spot. And honestly, like, I mean, I have a number of serious issues with the film. I don't think I'll be that upset if it gets nominated or even if it wins, because I think its heart is in the right place, and it is, a movie that, does, no pun intended, try to reach for the stars. And I think the only thing I really can't stand is when a really kind of banal movie, or a movie that's in some way like ideologically offensive, gets nominated or wins. I mean, but that's it. I don't think this should win. I've seen more than 10 other movies this year that would be more deserving, including, funnily enough, Game Night. Game Night is a better movie than this, so make of that what you will.
Yeah, and I'm also of the opinion that, like, if something wins Best Picture, it should at least have something to say.
Yeah.
This. I'm not going to say it doesn't have anything to say. It's just it's saying
said before.
It's been said before. That's why Moonlight was so much. I had a lot invested in it because we had never seen a story like that on that scale.
Right.
And I mean, like, The Shape of Water was kind of the safe choice, but at least it's like the safe choice, but also The Fishman is there, I guess.
Bold in its own ways.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
for sure, absolutely.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. I say that every year because I have no idea. I am not good at predicting these things.
It never makes sense even up until the night before.
Exactly. I mean, Suicide Squad won an Oscar. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Should not have won an Oscar.
And Wonder Woman didn't even get nominated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Again, Oscar. It feels like the big thing is going to be like, what's going to happen with Black Panther?
Yeah, that's the big question, I think, is...
We'll know that when the nominees are announced.
Yeah.
But overall, I liked it. I like this one. I liked A Star Is Born. I had fun with it. I don't know if it's gonna change anyone's life, but it's a solid enough feature. I got nothing to say.
I think if we're out of things to say, it's time to wrap it up. If you like this podcast, please click thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at T.H.O Movie Reviews. And please check out all the great reviews and content we have at thomoviereviews.wordpress.com. Once again, I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, here with Jim Newman, here with Mo Shaunette, here with Maxwell Meyers, and I'm losing my voice now. But I still have enough energy left to say, from all of us here at T.H.O Movie Reviews, happy movie watching. Bye.